Hello, I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory in for Hashtag the U-Word. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. More than 50 people have been killed in attacks along South Sudan's border with Sudan, one of the deadliest related to a boundary dispute. Zimbabwe launches a vaccination campaign against cholera as the country grapples with an outbreak of the disease that has killed more than 400 people. And U.S. President Joe Biden vows to respond after a drone strike by Iranian-backed militias kills 3 U.S. service members. All this and much more in today's Africa 54. Well, officials say more than 50 people, including women, children, and 2 UN peacekeepers, were killed in attacks along South Sudan's border with Sudan. It is the deadliest in a spate of incidents since 2021 related to a boundary dispute. Rachel Graham reports.
Scores of people, including women, children, and 2 UN peacekeepers, have been killed in attacks along South Sudan's border with Sudan. Officials called it the deadliest in a spate of incidents related to a boundary dispute since 2021. Armed young men from South Sudan's Warrap state carried out the raids into the neighbouring Abyei region on Saturday, Bullis Koch, the information minister for Abyei, said on Monday. Abyei is an oil-rich area that is jointly administered by South Sudan and Sudan, which have both staked claims to it. More than 60 people were wounded, Koch told Reuters. He said that the government had imposed a curfew to manage residents' fear. Koch added that hundreds of displaced civilians had sought shelter at a UN base. A Ghanaian peacekeeper and a Pakistani peacekeeper from a United Nations force were killed on consecutive days, the UN Interim Security Force for Abyei announced. Warrap State's information minister said his government would conduct an investigation jointly with the Abyei administration. There have been repeated clashes in Abyei between rival factions of the Dinka ethnic group related to a dispute over the location of an administrative boundary where significant tax revenue is collected from cross-border trade. Civil war in South Sudan erupted soon after the country won independence from Sudan. It was fought largely along ethnic lines between Dinkas and Nuers and caused hundreds of thousands of deaths between 2013 and 2018. Since then, routine clashes among a patchwork of armed groups have continued to kill and displace large numbers of civilians.
Well, Rachel Graham of Reuters filed that report. The war in Sudan between the armed forces and the rapid support forces is now spread to most of the country's 18 states. The United Nations says the conflict, which erupted in mid-April 2023, has killed at least 13,000 people. Sudanese political activist and environmentalist Nisreen El Saim, chairperson of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, traveled to northern Sudan earlier this month to speak with young people. El Saim spoke to viewers Caravan Dam about the fighting.
So a lot of people die, especially people who are suffering from kidney failure, because there is barely devices to do the process for them, for the kidney failure patients. And I think now we are entering 2,000 of people who died over cholera and dengue fever. And I think also one of the things I noticed that the numbers of the IDPs are increasing, and there is no places to post them. There is no camps whatsoever. They are now putting them mostly in the schools or in the universities and so on. And they are very hungry, they are very thin, they have all sorts of problems because there is not enough support flowing for them.
Did you see humanitarian groups operating anywhere?
Yes, they were operating, but the need is by far more than the actual available resources. I can't say I went into hot clashing areas because it was too dangerous. Also because the army planted landmines around the northern area. So now even going there, Even if you were not killed by the army or by the RSF, you will probably die because of the explosion of the land mines. And we've had two accidents already of two buses were blown up by them.
Well, that was Sudanese activist Nisreen El Saim speaking with viewers Caroline Van Dam. Now, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says he believes war crimes are being committed by both sides in Darfur region since fighting erupted between the rival generals in mid-April.
Based on the work of my office, it's my clear finding, my clear assessment that there are grounds to believe that presently Rome Statute crimes are being committed in Darfur by both the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces and affiliated groups.
Well, the United Nations estimates that the conflict in Sudan has displaced 7.1 million people inside the country, and more than 1.5 million have fled to neighboring countries, particularly Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan. Nearly 25 million people currently need humanitarian assistance and protection. Well, it's time now for a health reporter, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest news on cholera in Zimbabwe. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Zimbabwe has launched a vaccination campaign against cholera to contain a worsening outbreak of the disease that the government says has killed more than 400 people. The World Health Organization says the southern African country received the first batch of almost 900,000 vaccines last week. On Monday, government officials started administering the first doses in Kuwadzana, a suburb of Harare, the capital, and one of the hardest hit areas. Cholera is contracted from bacteria generally transmitted through contaminated food or water. Zimbabwe has been battling the current outbreak since February last year. It has reported more than 20,000 suspected cases and 400 deaths, of which 71 have been confirmed by laboratory tests. Meanwhile, Zambia continues to fight against the surge of cholera in the country. Observers say the outbreak, which was declared in October, has infected nearly 15,000 people and killed close to 600 others. For more insight on the cholera outbreak in the region, Dr. Fiona Braka, Emergency Response Manager at the WHO Africa Regional Office, joins me live via Skype from Brazzaville, Republic of Congo. Welcome, Dr. Braka. You just returned from Zambia. Can you give us a sense of the current state of the cholera outbreak in the region?
Thank you for having me. The current outbreak in the region is concerning. We are seeing a surge in cholera over the last 3 years, and this is currently underway for the third consecutive year. We are seeing prolonged outbreaks in the region. Since January of 2022, we have seen over 300,000 cases and 5,000 deaths in 17 countries. Many countries are of concern, particularly Zambia and Zimbabwe. And as you mentioned, Zambia is going through a major outbreak, the worst that they have seen in the recent past. But a lot of effort to try and get this outbreak under control as quickly as possible.
So, Dr. Braka, what is fueling this current outbreak, and to what extent is climate change impacting this situation?
The outbreaks of cholera are due to inadequate water and sanitation, and these are exacerbated during rainy seasons. We are seeing episodes of flooding as well as cyclones. As you may recall, last year there were major cyclones in southern Africa, and these have coupled with the water and sanitation situation have led to an increase in the number of outbreaks. Also, conditions around drought. We had the the worst drought in 40 years in the Horn of Africa in 2022-2023. These situations predispose to limitations in access to clean water. That also increases the likelihood of diseases like cholera. We are also seeing in conflict-affected areas displacements of populations and limited access to clean water. That also predisposes to outbreaks such as cholera.
Are there cases where scenarios where climate change, cholera rather, can be predicted? Can cholera outbreaks be predicted and perhaps prevented?
Yes, there are tools for predicting cholera outbreaks. These are available. WHO is working with countries, ensuring that we provide this information on predictions of cholera outbreaks. There is a global elimination plan by 2030, and the African countries have also signed up to that. But unfortunately, progress is very slow. Most countries are not on track. We are going to need a very aggressive, multi-sectoral, comprehensive approach that not only addresses the health component, but water and sanitation facilities to reach that target.
So what can you predict in terms of how these countries, particularly Zimbabwe and Zambia, will see perhaps a positive outcome? How long will it take?
We have seen both countries rallying up aggressive support and interventions to try and stop these outbreaks. And over the last few weeks, we have seen the numbers start to stabilize and in some instances go down in terms of cases and in terms of mortality. So we want to encourage that the effort continues aggressively and that we are following a multi-sectoral comprehensive approach, because cholera is not only a health issue, but it's also a development issue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Braca, for joining us today. Dr. Fiona Braca is the Emergency Response Manager at the WHO Africa Regional Office in Brazzaville, Republic of Congo. That's today's health report. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thank you very much, Lino, for that report. Be sure to watch Lino Modo's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. Now, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak won the first vote in the upper house of Parliament on his legislation to revive a plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Another plan which has yet to be carried out. Asylum seekers who arrive on England's southern coast in small inflatable boats would be sent to Rwanda to live. Viewers Paul Dio has more.
After more than 6 hours of debate, unelected members of the House of Lords, made mainly of former politicians and government officials, defeated an amendment that would have killed off the legislation by 206 votes to 84. Under the Rwanda plan, which has yet to be carried out, asylum seekers who arrive on England's southern coast in small inflatable boats would be sent to Rwanda to live. The bill is Sunak's answer to a UK Supreme Court ruling late last year that deporting asylum seekers to Kigali is illegal under international law.
And also what they're attempting to do is to undermine the ability of asylum seekers to be able to have access to appeal in the UK to determine whether, in fact, and to limit those appeal rights significantly, as well as to undermine the ability of the European Court of Human Rights to impose interim injunction measures where they feel that there may be threats to rights under the Convention. So it's very, very problematic from a rule of law perspective to see what the UK government is currently doing now.
Critics dismiss it as an expensive gimmick that would not work, accusing the government of not doing enough to clear asylum backlogs.
All people, asylum seekers included, are of great value. We can, as a nation, do better than this bill.
Unlike elected members of the House of Commons, the Lords do not have the power to block the ratification of the treaty, which is central to the legislation. But the vote to which the government will have to respond suggests new difficulties for the controversial bill. The bill itself, which defines Rwanda as a safe third country and prevents the return of migrants to their country of origin, is due to be debated in the upper house next week. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Now for more on the repatriation of African asylum seekers back to the continent, Michaela Wrong, journalist and author, joins me live via Skype from London. Welcome to Africa 54.
Hello.
Yes, now let's begin with the whole question of returning a person to the continent. They took all the risks. They've traveled across the deserts and the oceans, and they land in the UK. How is that being taken by migrants from Africa especially?
Well, I have to say I haven't interviewed them, so I wouldn't know. But we do know that when this bill was first proposed in 2022, that some of the migrants who were told that they would be heading off to Rwanda were saying that they would commit suicide rather than go. Because, as you say, they've come a long way. They've taken enormous risks to cross the channel, and then they're expecting to start new lives in the UK. And they certainly don't want to be going back to don't want to be going to Rwanda. I mean, it's worth bearing in mind that a lot of the people who are coming to the UK are fleeing dictatorships. And Rwanda has a really poor human rights record, and they are aware of that. So the last thing they want is to be moved to a new dictatorship.
Now, at home, why is this such a polarizing issue among the British people?
Britain is not the only country in Europe at the moment where the public is becoming increasingly concerned about high immigration rates, and it feels that it can't cope with the numbers that are arriving, that services, education, housing, that they simply can't deal with the numbers. And so we've seen the rise of populist right-wing governments promising to be tough on migration, and that appeals to voters, especially right-wing supporters of the Conservative Party. And even the left-wing Labour Party here is promising to be tough on migration. So this is part of their sales pitch, and we have an election coming up in November, and they are going to be, clearly the government has decided that the Rwanda bill is essential to winning the votes. So it is expected to lose that election. So it seems to have put a lot of emphasis on being tough on migration to try and win voters round.
And that those who have actually cited international law, where it is supposed to be that if a person arrives at the first country after escaping from whatever the situation might be where they've come from, they have a right to seek asylum in that country. So how is that playing out also for those who really care about international law and the UK's standing internationally, even from a moral point of view?
Yes, I mean, this is going to be debated. What the government is trying to do by having passed this new bill, which is the second of the bills that it has signed with Rwanda, is it is trying to avoid these issues being debated once again in the courts, because what happened at the end of a very long, torturous process last year was that the Supreme Court, our highest court, said Rwanda is not safe. And so Parliament now is being asked to decide that Rwanda is safe, despite what our highest court said. And that's what Rishi Sunak has decreed, that Rwanda is safe, and therefore this must be accepted by Parliament. And this is why people are raising the issue of constitutional crisis, because they're saying, the judiciary and the executive and Parliament are not supposed to contradict and interfere with one another. So if the Supreme Court is saying it's not safe, Parliament can't come along and decide it is. So we really have the basis of the Constitution is going to be debated over the next few weeks.
We certainly are going to keep watching this. Michaela, thank you very much. We appreciate your insights. Michaela Wrong is a London-based journalist and author of non-fiction books on Africa. And now we turn to the Africa Cup of Nations knockouts round, where some fans are shedding tears of joy while others are grieving over their team's losses. For the latest, VOA's Alvaro Andrande joins me live via Skype from Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Alvaro, tell us about the mood. I mean, it has been, of course, in Ivory Coast, a totally different mood than whatever must be happening in Dakar, Senegal.
It was a pleasure to hear. It was very surprise. I was in this hotel, and I following a lot of Ivorian fans here. They celebrate with the Ivorian players in this hotel for hours. And in the street of Abidjan, they set off fireworks, they dance on the street. It was a big day yesterday for Ivory Coast. After Ivory Coast was eliminated in the ground stage. But yesterday was a great day for Ivory Coast. At the end, the new coach, the interim coach, Faye, said it was a resurrection. That Ivory Coast won in the penalties after 1-1 draw. And the coach, the Senegalese coach, Aliou Cissé, said, and I quote him here, he said, I don't know, I can't explain what happened yesterday. We stopped playing after the goal. I can't explain with the last flow of the match. We had to continue playing, said Cissé. In the other game, Cape Verde won. The Mauritania was a tough game for the Blue Sharks. At the end of the game, the Cape Verdean coach told me it was the most difficult game in this AFCON. Today, two more teams will get the ticket. Will get the ticket to the quarterfinals in the city of Karogo, Mali and Burkina Faso. Mali was better in the group stage, but in those games are different, and now anything can happen, as we saw yesterday. Finally, in San Pedro, Morocco, one of the favorites to win the AFCON, is again South Africa, but South Africa is playing a pleasant football in this competition, and everything can happen. Today, two more games in Ivory Coast.
Thank you, and we know that soccer is a game of surprises. Thank you very much, Alvaro, for your reporting. That's VOA's Alvaro Andrande reporting live from Abidjan in Ivory Coast. Now we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, U.S. President Joe Biden vows to respond to a drone strike that killed 3 U.S. service members in Jordan. Stay with us.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, my conversation with the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, about the foreign policy of the United States, especially to West Africa. Also, Rama Yade, Senior Director for Africa at the Atlantic Council, talks about the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's latest trip to the continent. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, only a small fraction of needy people are receiving food aid, according to the Associated Press. Just 14% of 3.2 million people targeted for food aid by humanitarian agencies in the region this month had received that aid by January 21st. And watchdog Transparency International says South Africa's corruption perception index has dropped to its lowest in 12 years and is below the global average. South Africa's image has been stained recently by a lackluster economic record and allegations of corruption and cronyism. Now, the White House says it's not seeking war with Iran amid President Joe Biden's vow to respond to a drone strike that killed 3 U.S. service members in Jordan, an act Washington blames on Iranian-backed militias. Congress is pressuring the White House to strike back, which is likely to further escalate and expand the conflict sparked by Hamas' October attack on Israeli citizens. Viewers Anita Powell reports from Washington.
The White House is under pressure to react after a drone strike Sunday killed 3 U.S. service members in Jordan, an act Washington blames on Iranian-backed militias operating in nearby Syria and Iraq. On Monday, administration officials expressed confidence that Iran was behind the attack, but did not give details. Nor would officials lay out their next move.
I am not going to telegraph any punches here from the podium, nor will I get in front of the president or his decision-making. As he said yesterday, we will respond. We'll do that on our schedule, in our time, and we'll do it in the manner of the president's choosing as commander-in-chief. We'll also do it fully cognizant of the fact that these groups, backed by Tehran, have just taken the lives of American troops.
But Kirby said, one thing is clear.
We are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not seeking a conflict with the regime in a military way.
Iranian officials on Monday denied responsibility.
We are not seeking tensions even with America, inside or outside the region. The Islamic Republic of Iran seriously believes in political solutions to international and regional disputes.
The head of NATO in Washington on Monday also expressed his concerns and pointed a finger at Iran.
We see Iran continue to destabilize the region. Iran also bears responsibility for backing terrorists who attack ships in the Red Sea. Tehran's behavior reminds us of what a world without rules look like. Unpredictable and dangerous, a world where our security becomes more expensive.
It is also clear that this strike is part of the fallout from Israel's ongoing military operation in Gaza, after militant group Hamas conducted a stunning attack on civilians on October 7th. And analysts say one more thing is clear.
The U.S. strategy, if it was starting 3 months ago, not to let regional tensions escalate, that strategy has failed.
And from Jordan's capital, far from the drone strike, residents and analysts say they feel this represents a new phase in this conflict.
Attack represents a new dimension of this conflict, actually targeting the American troops inside Jordan or on the Jordanian border represents that this targeting is expanding from Syria to Iraq and now to Jordan.
So what now? It rests on these shoulders.
Last night in the Middle East, we lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
And I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those small souls.
Jesus.
And we shall respond. God bless you all.
Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching.